Good afternoon from Bali, everyone. It's Hanifa Menon from hearthealthbrainhealth.com, encouraging healthy grieving and mindful actions. Today, I have been reflecting on the idea and awareness and learning and wisdom about the stream of consciousness. And maybe you've heard that term before, but this stream of consciousness, and you know that I've made many videos about consciousness, and you're welcome to look at those on my YouTube channel. Today, I want to talk about the stream of consciousness and thoughts in that stream of consciousness. So our thoughts, I thought this was a fantastic quotation to begin with. This one is by Malcolm Forbes, and it says, "Thinkers perish, thoughts don't." Thinkers perish, thoughts don't. And I love this one. You might think I would too, think. This thought, the idea that thoughts are all around us and we're constantly generating them consciously and not consciously. Sometimes we're filtering them, we're hearing thoughts of others and they come through our minds, and sometimes we're consciously fixed on a thought. Maybe it's a personal experience, maybe it's a memory, maybe it's a feeling, and it comes up as a thought, and we think about it. And the more we think about any thought consciously, now we add energy to a thought and it perpetuates all around us. So if I am really happy and I am talking about my happiness and thinking about my happiness, and one thought leads to another, and this also makes me happy, and that makes me happy, and this makes me happy, all those happy thoughts, it's an energy that's generated both within me and outside of me. And then if you look at information from whether Vedic scripture, which you can understand is centuries old, or if we look at sages or mystics or scientists, so current neuroscientists and neural research has known this for a little bit of time, that right now we understand through that field and through Vedic study too, but lots of different branches of awareness for this, that there is something about thoughts that we believe we are thinking them, that we are the thinkers of our thoughts. And scientists have proven, so neuroscientists have proven, that thoughts are already formed in the brain before we have a conscious awareness of speaking them, or that we're thinking them even. So then if we don't even know when we're going to create a thought, what's creating the thought? And this is again something that has been discussed a lot in all sorts of circles, as I'm saying, and philosophers talk about this, writers and authors and poets have definitely talked about this, and you might think about this sometimes. And I'd also say, is it you who's thinking it? Because there is something that I've talked about before too, which is this collective consciousness. And guess what? That collective consciousness is constantly going through our minds. And you can do a little experiment right now and say, I ask you, what's the next thought you're going to think? What's the next thought that's going to be thought from your brain? And you know, you can sit for a while and don't know. You won't know. The minute you look at that carefully, you won't really know. I don't know what my next thought is going to be. And then you might sit in silence for a minute and say, oh, this is the thought. Now this is the thought that arose. And is it that you created that thought? Is it because of something that I've just said, or something someone else has just said, or some music that you've had on, or the smell of baking and you remember a family member that used to bake for you? Where did that thought come from? How does that arise? And as I'm mentioning, these thoughts are already created in the brain before we have a conscious awareness. And I love this awareness because it allows us a greater appreciation and understanding of this idea of sitting, whether we think of it in that Buddhist terminology, who are sitting, we think of meditation, we could think of prayer. Prayer oftentimes will include some memorized thoughts. These are the people that I want to pray for. These are the things I want to pray for. So there's still some conscious decision of this is how I'm directing these thoughts. Now, all those thoughts also, how did you start thinking about those? Was it because someone told you that, you know, it's really important to pray for your parents, it's really important to pray for your friends, it's really important to pray for our community, this country, whichever? It got there somehow, and then you regurgitate it, and as you do, it is not really your thought, but the mind allows it to claim ownership about our thoughts. So whatever, or what we think are our thoughts, whatever comes up, it's like, I thought that. Did I? Did this mind think it? Is it received somehow through the ethers, through loads of experiences? Whether if you think many lives, is it many lives ago that something comes through that this is how I behave, this is how I perceive this? Is it this particular life that I've had so many experiences in this experience that when that experience happens again, I think this about it? And so I'm already planning for how I will think about it the next time I have that experience. So all of this is very good for contemplation. I thought I would share this quotation by John Keats. It says, "The only means of strengthening one's intellect is to make up one's mind about nothing, to let the mind be a thoroughfare for all thoughts." Let the mind be a thoroughfare for all thoughts. And this is such a beautiful link, in this mind's perspective at least, with here's an author that is talking about just let it have that stream of consciousness. And most of us feel like we're in control, like I'm going to direct where I put my mind. And many people do this in terms of meditation too, that, okay, I'm going to focus on my breathing, so that's how I'm directing my mind. Is it the last person that I heard that said, breath is very important, breath work is very important in meditation, so make sure that's centered. It's interesting to contemplate itself. And this idea of controlling the mind and the thoughts, for example, I'm not going to think about anything right now, I just want to have clear space. There's one thought controlling another thought there. There's the thought that wants to be still, and the thought that wants to keep in its action if I want to think about the next thing I have to do. And so one thought is controlling another thought, and this gives us split thinking. So it really confuses the mind because it's all coming from the mind, and yet where's this perceived control? And one of the ideas that I think is very interesting in this too is the stream of consciousness and then the human mind. If we look at our nerves coming through our eyes, we don't normally, most of us are not seeing the blind spot. And I'm not talking about when we're driving and the blind spot in the car in the rear view mirror. It is our rear view mirror really in our own eyes. We've got a blind spot, which is literally a spot where there's no light getting to our brain to be able to see a spot that would be in our eye. And if we really were seeing reality, we would see a black spot in our vision from both of our eyes, or perhaps if we're looking at something together, we'd see one black spot because there's a spot that doesn't have any nerves there. And this is on the retina, that all of our nerves are there, and then they're hooking up with the optic nerve. And can you imagine, we should all be seeing a black spot, and that would be normal, yet the brain has a fantastic way of filling in the gaps. So we make it feel, the brain makes it feel as if there's continuity here. I know exactly what I'm seeing. I can put this all together. This is whatever I'm looking at. And I think of it as a complete shape. I don't see all sorts of things that I'm looking at with a black spot in the middle. This is what the brain does for us. It's such a blessing in some ways, yet we also have this continuity bias in everything that happens in our lives because we are constantly changing. Constantly. Every moment our thoughts are changing. They're changeable and they're changing. And that's because of the stream of consciousness. There's so much that goes through, and you'll notice that if you try to grab onto a thought, you'll soon have another thought. And this is an awareness because you are actually the awareness behind all of these thoughts. And to recognize that when we are aware of all of these thoughts coming through and then not take ownership for it, this is the link with something like Vedanta, Vedic studies, and I would say most spiritual or religious studies would actually come to the same conclusion when you look very deep into those religious scriptures. It's the same, that there is something about we're all one, we're all together, we're all learning together, and this is all coming through, and the brain has incredible powers. So this understanding that am I the thinker of my thought, and really there is this collective thought. Now creation is coming through all of us, and so we create what I see through my eyes or hear through my ears, and we feel like we have some control, and we do not have control in many of the ways that we think we do. So just like our thoughts are being thought, that we're not really controlling our thoughts, and yet we can see that the brain is already doing something when we're asked a question. There's already some response coming through before we have a conscious awareness. Very important for us to realize that this space of that surrender is surrendering to who we are, is pure awareness. Then I thought, I'm going to have one more video to follow up, at least on this one, but probably a few videos. I wanted to just share this because we can actually reflect, and you know that I do a lot of time of reflection and contemplation, and certainly in Bali, and I'll say in my travels, and Ontario too, so I'll say all my life, quite honestly, there's always been this awareness of people that interact with me, and I'll say specifically men, and then thoughts that might arise in my own mind too. So in this, it's so interesting because there are some people who are very smooth talkers, and it happens here in Bali as well as everywhere else I've been. And you'll notice this too. And smooth talkers for you will be different than a smooth talker for me. For me, I think, wow, how did that happen where I'm suddenly thinking or feeling this? And I would say it's smooth talking, and yet it is this collective consciousness that we are all part of and participating in some way. This quotation is just to end with a little bit of a chuckle. This is for those smooth talkers, those big talkers, those great talkers, those entertaining talkers, those talkers who are often speaking things that they have heard through collective consciousness coming through their own form. It says, his words span rivers and mountains, but his thoughts are still only 6 inches long. I hope you get the humor in that. I hope you have fun with it. I hope you have a smile on your face, because that smile is going to help our collective consciousness lift to just a higher vibration, and certainly will help you too. I wish you a fabulous day or night ahead, and I hope you remember, transform your mind and transform your life. Have a great day or night, everyone.